Hi everyone, we're back here at Makers Machining. Last week we had the pattern makers in the shop to talk about how castings look after they're cast. They've made the patterns for things. Now we're on the last step of this project. We've got castings here that have been machined already. We've got a pile of these castings, these pump housings. We've already machined them here. I'm going to go through how we run these things on the turret lathe here. Turret lathes are the predecessor to CNC lathes, but we're only making a couple of minute cuts on this thing here. We're not using all the capabilities of the turret lathe. We could if we really had to, but this is just a horse of a machine, and it can take heavy cuts. And basically in our shop here, we only use this thing here 3 or 4 times a year for this particular job, and I'll explain that to you in a minute here. So anyhow, we've already got the thickness of these castings machined, top and bottom. Now we have to go in and machine the pocket to a specific dimension. The impellers that we had last week fit down in there. This pocket here is 1 inch 55 thousandths deep. The impellers are 1 inch thick, and so the impellers, if they're centered and mounted to the motor on top and the shaft is correct, they set the impeller to the right clearance top and bottom so they can pump their material through this thing here. So anyhow, let's pull this thing out of the way here, and I'm going to get up here by the turret lathe, and we're going to stick one of these things in the turret lathe. As I said, we have both top and bottom machined. We got 4 little feet here, and when we put this in the lathe, the 4 little feet, you can kind of see on the faceplate here where those feet have been locating. We put this faceplate up there. We face it off every so often just to refresh the surface there, but then when we go to put the casting on there, we set it on here, and you can see the casting's got kind of a long point on it. So we always set that on here so the point is up here on the faceplate where the yellow arrow is, and we can get our screws in there to clamp this onto the faceplate. The reason we're putting this on the faceplate here, we got a flat surface. We're going to make our cuts parallel with the surface that they clamp on, or the top clamps to the bottom. We need to be able to get that thing to hold good. So I'm going to screw this thing in here. I got screws that are a little bit longer than normal because this casting here, this casting's a casting. All these slots and everything for the clamping screws don't necessarily line up every single time. Sometimes these slots here, as the pattern gets worn, the slots get a little narrower, so you run into some problems with that. But generally speaking, we've got small enough screws to go in there, but if they have to get deflected a little bit while we tighten the screws on, that gives us some room. Now, when I clamp this on here, I haven't tightened it yet. These 4 feet now, I've got to watch so all 4 feet are sitting flat on the surface that we're mounting to. So we've got it mounted on there. Everything is snug. If you have 3 feet that are touching, the 4th one's going to touch also. So let me tighten this up here. I'll just kind of alternate between the screws so we're not pulling it down, because these screws are outside the feet, and if we clamp one tighter than the other, the casting will lift off. And you know, if we pull this thing tight before that one has a chance to get tight, when we go to tighten this one and try to pull the feet onto the faceplate, we could crack the casting off. This casting here is, like I said last week, this one here's got 28% chromium in it, so it's a pretty tough material that they make these out of. Give it a little assistance here to tighten it up. We've got a pilot on the center of our faceplate there, but the pilot is considerably smaller than the hole. You can see there's a big gap here. There's no gap there. We put that up like this, so it drops down on the pilot. The pad that we have to machine should be kind of concentric with the hole, but it's a casting, and there's cores that go in there. They don't fit perfect all the time. Our opening here is eccentric, so the impeller throws the liquid through here and out of the pump. So we just need to have the pad parallel with the face of the casting here. So if this runs a little bit out of center, that's the nature of the beast. The casting has a hole. Sometimes it fits more one way than the other. It depends on how it's cored out. So anyhow, I'm going to run this up here. You can see here we've been machining some of these. Here's the chips. They're kind of a nice bronze color there. These castings are 50 to 55 Rockwell. They're pretty hard. So you're going to get some heat generated in how they cut. Even if you look here, we had to adapt this lathe to handle these. When this casting swings around here, it originally would not clear the carriage on our lathe, so we had to clear that out so this thing would swing around and make the cut. So we bring this tool in here, and you can see I've got our turning tool in the center where the hole is. Okay, we're not going to move that up there and bump the tool, because carbide, it'll cut anything, but if you bump it, it'll chip and break. So the way we have our setting made for our cut, we've got an indicator down here that the carriage goes up, and we're going to a 0 reading, which is right. Is that it?
Nope.
Oh, got to go back a little bit. Is it the bottom one down there? Okay. So we're going to go up to that line on the bottom there. That should be our. Oops. This thing here has got a little bit of lag in it there. We're going to bring this thing up until it touches there, and then we have to clamp the carriage tight. We've got a bolt here. Oops, wrong one. We've got a bolt here that we use to lock the carriage on the bed of the lathe. So
that has to go back yet.
What's got to go back?
You're off to 0.
Oh, okay. Oh, it's going to that line right there?
That black line.
Okay. We've got a plus or minus 5 thousandths tolerance on this. I'm a couple thousandths past our 0 ideal line, so we're in good shape. I can bump it back a little bit, like that. Okay, so I'm going to turn this on. The lathe makes a little noise, so I hope it doesn't drown out how I'm talking to you here, but when I turn this thing on, I have to make sure that this thing swings around and clears the carriage. So it's not in motion there. Swings back past it real nice. So now I can turn the spindle on. Okay? I'm going here about, how many RPM I'm going here? I would say we're going 68 RPM, roughly. This material is hard as can be. So, if you want to get up and look right in there, you can see that hole is not concentric, and the tool is not going to start a nice, even, easy cut on all the points. One thing I want to also point out here, the cross slide here has a clamp to help lock this thing. It's a little harder to turn, but it won't jump. If it would jump, the carbide would break. I've got one more topic on that too. This thing has a power feed right here. I lift this lever up, and you can see this thing, it feeds back and makes this cut across the pad. And you can see it's just starting to make that cut. It's a pretty heavy jump in there. And what I wanted to say about this situation there, it's an interrupted cut right now. It goes a little farther in. It's peeling off a nice chip there. If you were to try doing this on a CNC lathe, you probably couldn't do it. Right now, this is an old mechanical machine. There's a big heavy screw driving this thing on the cross slide. And I've got the hand snugged up, the slide snugged up there. If you were to do this in a CNC lathe, and the hardness of the material, interrupted cut, difficult cut, it would probably start cutting, and then it would be rough enough to move the cross slide or the turret or something would fall out because it's moved. Now CNC lathes have to know exactly where they are at within 1/1000 to 2 of an inch. If anything deviates, the machine will shut down. So we're able to use this old horse of a machine, and this bad boy's got some power and some torque. That's a heavy cut. We're talking 55 Rockwell. It's making that cut across there. It looks great. We're going to talk about the sharpening of that tool bit also. The tool bit, the top of that tool bit's right on the center line of the spindle, and we're kind of in a pocket. This pocket's an inch and 55 thousandths deep, like I said. So our tool bit has to stick out. I don't know if you can look in from the top up there. The tool bit's sticking out a ways. And it's a good stout shank. That's a 1-inch shank on that tool bit. We had to find the right grade of carbide to cut this nasty material. We tried several different grades and finally found one of the Kennametal K88 tool bit. That cuts through that. So Kennametal is going to be approached about sponsoring this ad in this video. Just for giving them a plug here. But not every carbide is made for every certain particular job. So we found one that can hold up to it. Anyhow, we have to sharpen it, so like any tool bit, the predominant point where it's cutting is the corner of the tool bit. I've got our tool bit here. Here's another one that we've got sharpened. This thing's buried in this cut right on here on the angle. This is the focal point of the cut. We're going across a face, so we have to have this face relieved back here. When we get out to where it's finished on our cut, there's also, if you notice going around here, there's a little leg that sticks out, and we have to clear that. And our signal to stop machining this is when the tool bit starts hitting that little leg that sticks out there. So we also have to have our tool ground away like this so it will fit inside the circle of this cut we're doing. So it's kind of like a boring box. In reverse there, I guess I'm showing you. But anyhow, it's cutting along there pretty nice. We have to keep this tool sharp. And we relieve the tool this way, and we've got the tool cleared this way and cleared this way. So the predominant point for the cut is right here on the tip of this tool. Now we've got a bit of a 45-degree angle on there. If we sharpen this to a perfectly square corner, that little square corner would break down right away. It would get dull. So we put an angle on there, and that helps immensely with the life of the cut. We can probably proceed 3 or 4 of these castings or more, and we have done more on one sharpening. So it depends on how the castings come out and what we end up doing in our tool. You can see our zero line on the indicator has not moved, so we've got the carriage locked in. It's not pushing away. And believe me, if we didn't lock that casting is so hard it would push the carriage right away. So we're on 0 with our indicator there. That's holding its own. We're getting out to the end of the cut a little bit here. With that 45 on the tool bit, we may end up with a little ridge that remains on the OD of the part. But this machine is geared. Now it's sitting back here in the corner doing nothing, but 3 or 4 times a year we turn it on, and it's sitting back here in the corner. Here's where it really gets rough. We're getting an interrupted cut because the outer brown condition is allowing that thing to have an interrupted cut. And the skin on this casting is really rough. Now after we machine, we buried that cut. We're trying to make it one pass. We're just about out. Just about. In a second you'll hear it hit that finger sticking out. We're going to go until it touches that a time or 2. There we go, we're almost there. Finishing the cut. Now it's hitting that finger. I shut the speed off. Okay, with carbide, we want to, and you can see how it's jumping. I've released the clamping pressure on there. We're going to bump this thing back away from the machine. We're going to get our tool in the middle there, and we're good to go. Okay, so now we have to check our part. We'll get this casting to swing up here. We're going to get this thing out of the way. Let's go. Get this thing out of here, and now we're going to measure our step with our caliper. You can see there was a little remaining ledge there, so we're going to have to grind that away 30 seconds after the fact. Okay, so we're going to stick this measuring tool in here. Here's our dimensions, 1.249. We have to be at that dimension here when we get our step measured. Got to turn on the caliper first. And we get in here. And it's supposed to be 2.300. We're at 2.304. Perfectamundo.